Hi, everyone. Thank you for the great intro. So my name is Josh Wardle, and believe it or not, I made a game called Wordle, which I'm going to talk to you today. So the title of this talk is called Opting for the Opposite, and the reason for that is I think when making the game, I made a bunch of decisions that are the opposite of what you are meant to do, but those decisions led to the runaway success of the game. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing to talk about, and that doesn't, people look at Wordle and they see the success. I want to talk about all the weird things that I did on the way there. But before I get started, actually, I want to acknowledge, I feel there's a part of me, right, that feels really good being up on this stage in front of you, but then there's another part of me that feels really skeptical and concerned about that part of me that feels good, and I kind of don't know what to do about that. So what I've arrived at is I'm going to read a poem, and we'll see how that works. If it's any consolation, I didn't write the poem, and it's very short. So here we go. The poem is called Deconstruction by Mary Ruefle. I think the sirens in the Odyssey sang the Odyssey, for there is nothing more seductive, more terrible, than the story of our own life, the one we do not want to hear, and will do anything to listen to. Cool. Thank you for humoring me. You didn't have a choice. I'm trying this out. Maybe I'll just feel really pretentious, and I don't know, maybe I won't do it again. So, I wanted to acknowledge, Wordle wasn't the first thing I did that got fairly popular. It is by far and away the most popular thing I've ever done. But I used to work at Reddit, and I made these social experiments, the button and place. Thank you. And I think it's important to acknowledge that because I think it's easy to look at Wordle and feel like it just came out of nowhere. But I've been kind of working in this space for a little while. In case anybody doesn't know, Wordle is a daily word guessing game. You have 6 guesses to guess a 5-letter word. So we've entered the first guess here, soupy, and we are told that the hidden word that we're trying to guess, there is an S in it, but it's not in the first spot, and the O, U, P, and Y are not present. So we make another guess, in this case, waste. We learn about the A. There is an A in the hidden word, and it's in the second spot. And then we learn some more about the S, and now we learn some stuff about an E. We make another guess. Cool, there is only one thing that it can be. Nailed it. All right, that's the game. Very simple, Wordle. So this was the first thing I did that you're not meant to do, I think, if you want to be successful, is I made a word game. I think at the time I made Wordle, if you thought about like runaway viral success mobile game, you would not have thought of a word game. And that's kind of sad to me. I love language and I love words. And so it's so clear to me that having language be this core part of Wordle was the reason it was successful. So I think about this quote from a literary theorist, Terry Eagleton. He says, "Language is the very air I breathe." My interpretation of this is that humans are creatures of language, right? Like every experience we have is mediated through this filter of language, and words are a subset of that. And what that means in terms of a game is that every human being has this innate understanding of words. And when they come to your word game, you don't have to teach them the mechanics of language. They already have that. So in the case of Wordle, a player will come to the game and know that it is very unlikely that the hidden word that they're trying to guess starts with the letter X. I didn't have to teach them that. They already have that knowledge. And so I think the power of Wordle and the power of language is it's something that everybody has access to, and it allowed the players to go really, really deep. So this is a game called Mastermind. I used to play a bunch as a kid. And so in around 2013, I decided I wanted to make a game for my partner. I like words. She liked word games. So basically, I took this game, Mastermind, where you're trying to guess this hidden colored pattern. And I was like, what if I mash this up with words? And it's a word that you're trying to guess. And that's what I built. So this is way back in 2013. I am a product manager at Reddit at the time. I'm not a designer. I'm not a software engineer. So I'm kind of like figuring things out. This is the first version of Wordle. It was a prototype I wrote for Android. Looks horrific, obviously. But it's the core game, right? You have 6 guesses. You're guessing a 5-letter word. But there are two big differences with this version of the game that I want to get into. One is that it is endless play. As soon as you complete a word, it just selects another one and you're playing again. And what I found there is that people would play the game for about 20 minutes and then they would put it down and never play again. The other thing this prototype did was when it was choosing the hidden word, it just picked, there are about 13,000 five-letter words in the English language. It picked one of those at random, and that was the word you were trying to guess, right? So superficially, that seems fine. There was a problem, and that is these are all valid five-letter words in the English language, right? And I don't know what any of these mean. It's kind of wild that English works like this, but and it became clear to me playing the prototype that this was a problem, right? Like if you sit down to play Wordle, and the word you're trying to guess is one of these, you can't bring all that stuff you know about language to the game. The word could begin with an X, because I don't know what any of these are. So it was clear to me I had those 13,000 five-letter words. I needed to filter them down to a subset of words that people could reasonably know. There are a bunch of different ways you can go about this. My approach, a little odd, was to build a game to do it. It's barely a game, so what it did is it showed you one of the 13,000 five-letter words, and you had to say if you knew it, you don't know it, or you maybe know it. And my partner, who I was building Wordle for, she sat down and she categorized all 13,000 five-letter words. And so, yeah, and that core word list, so it went from 13,000 down to about 2,500. It was a very invisible part of Wordle when people were playing, but had a huge impact on the success. You knew when you were playing the Wordle each day, you were very likely to know what the word is. So I figured out the word lists. I'm kind of doing OK with Android development. We're at config. I need to figure out design. So this is deeply embarrassing, what I'm about to show you. This is me trying to design Wordle in 2013. So like I said, I was a product manager. I was kind of getting familiar with design, but I think this might be a common thing that happens to most people. I just tried to do way too much. I'd learned about opacity, so like, let's throw opacity into everything. And you can see a few things that I really struggle with. How do you submit a guess? So the one on the far right here, I just have this big submit button. The natural spot for a submit button is probably in the bottom left of the keyboard, which you can see I'm trying in this middle version, but the return arrow points away. It doesn't feel great, so I don't know what I'm doing there. You can also see, because the game at this point is endless play, I feel the need to add a score. So there needs to be a place in the UI to display a score, and then these red X's were meant to be lives, like a run of the game would end when you got 3 wrong. And so, yeah, these are pretty bad. I got slightly better, so these were other prototypes. This is a little too chunky, but you can see so much of the finished game. Bear in mind, this is 2013, and I'm still figuring stuff out here. So I got a prototype. I got the word list. I think I'm good at design. I'm not good at design, but the last thing I need is a name for the game. I'm called Josh Wardle, so it's really obvious what the name for the game is going to be. This is true. I was going to call Wordle Mr. Bug's Wordy Nugs. And for a talk that is about doing the opposite of what you're meant to, this is one case where this is doing the opposite of what you're meant to. Don't do this. Like this is, had I called the game Mr. Bug's Wordy Nugs, I like to think it would not have been successful. So yeah, so I've got all this stuff together. What do I do next? I don't do anything. I'm like, yeah, I kind of lose interest in the game. I put it on the back burner, and I do some other projects. And this is another thing that I don't think you're meant to do. I didn't do anything. Like, I think there is a lot of focus on kind of like hustle culture, grind set, all that stuff. I have to acknowledge that for me and Wordle, that 6-year gap of not thinking about it was crucial in its development. And I think there are times when you need to do the work and work hard, but I think in creative endeavors, those gaps are also really important. There's stuff going on in your head that you're not even thinking about. So 6 years later, it's like beginning of 2020, I think. My partner and I are playing a lot of the New York Times crossword. So for those who don't know, the New York Times releases a crossword every day. My partner and I will play it together. I highly recommend if you play crosswords, but you haven't played with someone else, play it as a co-op game. It's fascinating. It reveals really interesting things about the other person to you. There is also, they have this other game, which my partner really enjoyed, called Spelling Bee, which I did not like. And the key takeaway for these things that I could see how clearly it worked was that you could only play them once a day. So that was another thing that I did that you are not meant to do, is you can only play Wordle once a day. So I think with mobile games especially, right, you think a lot about how much, you're meant to think about all these brutal things like capturing people's attention, and the only reason you would stop them playing the game is so you could show them an ad so they could replay. I was building this game for my partner. It was very clear. I didn't want it to take up her time, so that freed me to be like, this Wordle only wants 3 minutes of your day, and that's it, and I feel fine about it. So this was, I think, in 2021. This was the first commit for Wordle, so I had picked up web development, given up on Android, and so yeah, this was the very first version of Wordle that I built in JavaScript, and you can see it's really getting close to the finished product. But this was something else I did that you're not meant to do. I made a website. I think a lot of the thinking around games was that you want an app so you can capture your audience, you can send them push notifications. I didn't want to do any of that. It was just she and I playing the game, so making it as a website seemed so obvious to me, and I think it really helped the game. Like, you could share it with someone, they were on a desktop computer, they could just play the game. That was totally fine. Here's another thing that I did. I had a really, really bad URL. I would have thought this mattered way more. So Wordle originally was played at my personal domain, which is powerlanguage.co.uk/Wordle. So it's just a bunch of stuff that doesn't make any sense. And I would have thought that mattered way, way more for a game to go viral. Maybe had I had a vanity URL, it would have, it would have helped it a little, but clearly it didn't need it. So this mattered way less than I thought. So yeah, this is, I pretty much at the end of that process, I arrive at the version that everyone ended up playing. So this was live on my personal site for about 6 months with just my partner and I playing it every day. And around that time, I shared it with my family, and then they shared it with some friends, and it started to kind of trundle and get bigger and bigger. And then, people are sharing it. It's amassing a bunch of followers. And for some reason that I don't understand, it gets really big in New Zealand. So for context, New Zealand has a population of about 5 million, and the US has a population of about 330 million. And so this is the number of Wordle players in each country. So it's wild in New Zealand. And there, a player of Wordle, who I don't know, called Elizabeth S., comes up with this idea. She opens up her emoji keyboard and types her Wordle score into Twitter and shares it. And then a bunch of other people are doing this, opening the emoji keyboard, typing it. So I go ahead and implement that into the game. And this grid becomes a really big part of Wordle, and I think it's interesting on a number of levels. One, it is a way to share a kind of spoiler-free version of the game, and it also communicates something about the journey that you went on when you're playing the game, and you can share it with other people and talk about that journey. You'll also notice absence here. The game doesn't link back to itself. It doesn't say, hey, come to powerlanguage.co.uk/Wordle to play the game. And that was a really big part. The game didn't promote itself. I showed the prototype, or I showed this version of the game to some, game developers I really respected, and they were like, you need to be linking back to it. And that felt really complicated to me. It felt like if I was getting something by you sharing, I don't know, that kind of felt gross to me. And like, I was building this game for my partner. It just felt very clear that that wasn't something I wanted to do. And I think people kind of appreciate that like Wordle was just, it was very intimate, and it wasn't kind of trying to shamelessly sell itself. So around this time, Wordle really starts popping off. Celebs, they love Wordle. They're sharing it everywhere on Twitter. It's going great. This person, they paint their Wordle score. I love that. This person cross-stitches their Wordle score. This is amazing. New York Times writes an article about I made this game for my partner. They write an article. We're quite private people. This felt a bit awkward, but You know, it is what it is. Jimmy Fallon's playing it. Trevor Noah's playing it. This is Bloomberg. Monica Lewinsky, she loves Wordle, it turns out. These lads, they love playing Wordle. They're in like some weird Wordle gang that I don't fully understand. This happens, so a woman was taken hostage, and her daughter knew to notify the police because the woman, her mother, didn't share her Wordle score, which is like absolutely wild. And I also want to share, so I come from a small town in Wales, in the UK, and British tabloids have a very special way with words. This is how my local paper, so farmer that's my dad. Son, that's me. Wordle game saves hostage gran. Amazing. So the game's going really well. Everyone's playing it. Everyone's loving it. Celebs are playing it. And then I go ahead and sell the game to the New York Times. And I think this took a lot of people by surprise. And I think it was a very clear decision for me to make to sell the game. This is a big one. I didn't want to run a games business. I'm interested in creating things. It was obvious due to the success of Wordle that I could make it my life if I wanted to. But in running a games business, there are a bunch of things that I wouldn't enjoy about running a games business. And it just felt so clear to me that wasn't something I wanted any part of. The other thing that I didn't do that you're probably meant to do with games is I didn't want to monetize it at all. So I didn't want to serve ads. And all of this comes back to, right, I'm building a game for my partner. I'm not going to show her ads or try and upsell her on a premium subscription. But even though I didn't want to make money from Wordle, it quickly became apparent to me that there were other people who were going to make money off Wordle, whether I was involved or not. And so this kind of manifested in some like weird kind of knockoff and like stuff that I felt deeply conflicted about, right? Like people using this thing that I made to make money that I had said that I didn't want to make. But yeah, something about it just felt gross. And so selling to the New York Times was kind of a way just to like step away, and I don't have to deal with that anymore. So one of the really big things that I have taken away from Wordle was the impact that it had on individual relationships. And this wasn't something that I was thinking about when I was making the game. So I got this message from someone who plays Wordle that I wanted to read out. They say, "I'm a Wordler in Nebraska. Both my parents play now. We don't have a lot in common, even though we love each other a lot. I'm gay, they're conservative Christians. Wordle has given us a way to come together every day. My mother loves that regular contact with me, and it's something that I enjoy too, that distracts me from all the difficult differences that are between us." And this is amazing, right? Like, this isn't what I set out to do with Wordle. And I find this both heartwarming and tragic, obviously, but I think what really stuck with me is the desire people have to connect with one another, and that Wordle could provide an avenue for people to do that. And a really big takeaway that I've had is that it turns out a lot of families have a group chat, basically, where they're messaging each other every day. And what you really want to say a lot of the time in those group chats is you want to tell your family that you love them. But it's kind of hard to do that. If you go blazing into the family group chat, "I love you," people are like, "Wait, what? What's going on?" Right? Or like, "How do I respond?" Or you can't say "I love you" every day. Well, maybe you can, I don't know. But I think for me, Wordle provided an avenue for people to say "I love you" without saying the words "I love you." And it was a very lightweight, non-charged way. If I share my Wordle score with you, I'm saying that I love you. You can share your score back, or you can ask me how I'm doing, and it's like this avenue into a larger discussion. And this is my family group chat. It had to be splintered off the regular family group chat because it was so disruptive, actually, because there was so much Wordle sharing. And yeah, that people really want to feel connected, and there are these intimate spaces that we don't have insight into. I think with Wordle, people think a lot about the sharing happening on Twitter and in public, but actually it's these like intimate spaces that I didn't plan for at all that have been the most meaningful for me. And it's things like people telling me that they play Wordle with their kids every day. And so, yeah, this kind of brings me on to my last point, which is I didn't set out to make Wordle. The things that make Wordle what it is, I couldn't have done if my goal was to make Wordle, which is kind of a weird way to think about it. If I had set out to make a hit viral word game, I would not have made Wordle. It was only because that wasn't my focus at all. I was trying to do something that was authentic to me. I was trying to build something for someone that I loved. It just so happened a bunch of other people loved it. That's great. So when people come up to me and they ask me, they want to know, they want to make the next Wordle, basically. My advice to them is don't try to make Wordle. Make the thing that you're passionate about, that is meaningful to you, and then everything else will follow from that. So yeah, over the course of Wordle's development, these moments where I did the opposite of what you're meant to, some of them were intentional, like me deliberately, I didn't want to put ads in it, for instance. Some of them were completely unintentional. I thought I was trying to make Wordle. It's only looking back on it that I can see I was doing kind of something totally different. And so yeah, thank you. I wanted to spend this time and just point out some of those moments. Thank you.